Hi, Kevin. Thanks for joining me here on Struggle to Strength today.
Hello, good to be with you, and hello to everybody else.
So, I'll just quick introduce myself. So, I'm Mary Beth Simone, and I am the CEO and founder of Niche Partnership Consulting. And I teach entrepreneurs and professionals how to create their contingency plan so that their second in command is prepared to step in during an emergency. And my business was born out of a personal struggle. So, through this series, my goal is to highlight other people's stories of struggle to strength in hopes of inspiring people to see their challenges as an opportunity to develop a strength. So, if you're with us live, we would love to see your comments and questions in the chat. And I see Jeremy is here with us. And if you're watching the replay, feel free to add any questions, and I'll invite Kevin to join me in coming back and answering any questions that pop up for
I love
people
it.
who watch the replay. Yeah. All right. So, Kevin, thank you so much for joining me today. So, today we're going to focus our conversation on from pain to purpose, finding strength through the struggle. So, before we dive in, can you tell us a little bit about your background and your work?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Mary Beth, again for inviting me. The TEDx event got canceled this year, so this is a great opportunity for me to tell people a little bit about it. So what I do now, I speak professionally. I speak full time, and I travel to wherever I'm asked to speak, whether it's in person or virtually, to do leadership and motivational speeches for companies and organizations. I also do some coaching for speakers, people that want to get into speaking, and frankly, anybody that wants to use the platform of speaking to increase their business, whether it's coaching, consulting, trainings, things like that. But prior to me launching into speaking, I had a career as a teacher. I grew up in a family of teachers. My dad was a preacher, and I knew that I wanted to get into higher education to be a dean of students, because the dean of students at my college at UNC Wilmington, go Seahawks, he actually not just saved me from dropping out many times when I tried, but he actually saved my life, because college for me was very transformational. So by the time I was a senior, getting ready to graduate with marine biology, I realized I love marine biology. I love the water, but I don't want to do anything with it. And then I realized that there was a career in higher education or student affairs. And then for the next 10 years, as I kind of started weeding through different positions and earning my doctorate degree in leadership, I became a dean of students. And then I also had spoken a little bit part-time. And then through all that, I found myself one day waking up and I said, you know what, I think speaking is calling me. And about a little over 10 years ago, I burned the boat. I quit my job, my day job as a dean, to live my dream job as a professional speaker.
Wow, so you achieved your dream job and then decided to move on to something else.
Unexpectedly, yeah. At the time, my sister was going through cancer, and but a lot of things were going on in my world at that time. My part-time speaking also had taken and pushed me to a new level, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But I realized I was in a deeper purpose for sharing a message through speaking, and I felt like I could do more of that traveling across the country rather than respectfully sitting in an office or being at one campus.
Yeah. So that's a great segue. So I first learned about you when I was reviewing the TEDx Cape May program for 2021 and saw Dr. Kevin Snyder's talk. And the description of your talk just fascinated me, because I think that you are talking about things that no one else talks about, and especially no other man who I've ever seen talks about. So TEDx Cape May, as you mentioned, has been postponed, hopefully to October 2nd is what Norris was saying they proposed to TED. So hopefully early next October. But can you tell us a little bit about your TEDx talk?
Yeah, so my title was called Giving Pain Purpose. And I'll be honest with you, there were some ideas. I had different ideas for what I wanted to share in my TEDx talk. And this was one that kept resonating because you're spot on, exactly right. Never had I seen a talk about a man, especially a 12-year-old. My talk is about my story and how I found different meaning in it for my depression when I was 12 years old. And I was also diagnosed with an eating disorder called anorexia. And in the 80s, the doctors respectfully didn't have any knowledge on what to do with me. I mean, some doctors wanted to study my brain like a monkey, and others wanted to test drugs on me, and others said, we've never had this. We've never experienced a young boy, an adolescent with depression, let alone an eating disorder. So long story short, the TEDx talk, Giving Pain Purpose, is kind of a little bit about my story, but more importantly, it was about my journey of not just recovery, but also self-discovery on over how the next couple of years not only shaped what I do now through speaking and wanting to get into higher education, but also shaped me into who I am today. Because for years and years and years, I didn't want anybody to know that I was that kid. Like I was that young kid with all the problems, because there is still a stigma against people talking about mental health, especially in men and especially in young men. So I felt like my story could help hopefully inspire people, not just with hope, but hopefully with a new awakening that what we want to hide often, or what we don't want people to know, can actually be what can help them the most.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel like my purpose, not that I feel like, the big guy above, the universe said, hey, we're going to give you anorexia. We're going to give you depression so that you can help. No. It's how to make meaning from experiences, from trauma, from setbacks, from failure, from relationships that went bad, from a bad boss. I mean, from anything that may have been for some reason holding us back or holding us down. It's impossible to move on from something. We move with it. And so I think when we find meaning from it, we can help other people. And that's the whole point of the program.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fantastic. I cannot wait to hear your full talk. I'm already so excited about it. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you became more comfortable sharing this personal information? Because I know for a lot of people that is like a step too far for them.
It was very difficult at first. In fact, for years, I never talked about it. And here I was, working as a director of student activities. I was a coordinator of Greek life. I was an academic advisor. These were different positions I had in higher education. Students would come in my office and they would share these stories with me about all the things that were going wrong. Usually if they're having an academic problem in the class, most often there was other things that were sourcing that or that were impacting that. And I never knew that, or I never had the calling or the realization that here I was with so much junk behind me that I didn't want them to know, because I thought, well, I have to be strong. I can't be, if I admit to them that I had some of the same issues, then maybe they won't trust me, or maybe they won't think I'm good enough, right, to help them. And it was all internal head trash that I had. It was this internal assumption that, if I was transparent with them, that would be a weakness. No, transparency in that case would have allowed me to better connect with them, to actually help them even more. So for years, I struggled with that. I didn't talk about it. But there was a little seed in me. And I remember Carol Vanderswag, my counselor, when I was 17 years old, getting ready to go off to college, because I'd gone through counseling for years and years. But by the time I was going off to college, I met with her about once a quarter, just like little check-ins, And I remember telling her on one of my last visits or one of my last sessions, I said, someday I'm going to use all this that I've gone through. I'm going to write a book about it, and I'm going to help people, but I have no clue how. And I remember that moment because she started to cry, and I started to cry because I should have died. I mean, it was that bad. And when people are in such a dark hole too, unless somebody else helps them, they most often cannot get out of it. And just this morning, my wife told me that one of our mutual friends attempted suicide last night.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and she's in the hospital today, so it's hour by hour. But through my speaking, and I think that's when a young girl named Kelly, and I'll keep this real short, but she came up to me after her presentation, and it was November 16th of 2005 at a conference in Chicago, the National Orientation Directors Association. This young student came up to me. She was crying. She waited in line to chat with me afterward, and then she ran out of the room. And I knew there was something else on her mind. So the next morning, I'm checking some emails, and she sends me an email. Hey, you probably don't remember me, but I was that girl that ran out, blah, blah. She goes, I want you to know that you saved my life yesterday. Your story, that your leadership presentation, and your dream of being on The Price is Right and meeting Bob Barker, which that's a whole nother story.
I love that. I watched that video.
Yeah. But Kelly shared with me, she goes, I came to that conference to kill myself. And yours is the only program I went to that day because I didn't want people to start looking for me. And by going to your program, you helped me think differently about my life and what I wanted in my dream, because you had a dream and you got through it. Well, here's the thing. Kelly didn't know. And then Kelly tells me her story: depression, abuse, drugs, bulimia. She was adopted, all these things in her life that she felt like were kind of weighing down on her. She didn't know that she and I had so much in common. And that was the moment that I realized speaking, I have a deeper calling for it. It's not just presenting. I am the messenger to helping people. All I do, I don't have the answers, but I have insights that can help other people. And that's where I realized there's something more here that I need to pay attention to.
Yeah, and I feel like the culture of not speaking about it just recreates the shame cycle over and over again, where it is difficult for them to for us to ask for help if we are caught up in that shame.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I want people listening to this to know I still struggle. My wife will tell you that. I still struggle with everything that I share. I wrote a book on this. I've done research on this. My research in my doctorate program. Awareness is the engine of growth. And just because we know something, it doesn't mean that we've got it all figured out. It's a muscle. Mental health is a muscle, and we have to work on it constantly. And when it matters most is when it's most difficult. And that's the challenge. That's when, if somebody is listening to this and they're dealing with something right now, or they've already dealt with something, or guess what? They will be dealing with something in the future. How are we going to handle that? How are we going to think differently about that? How are we going to change the station of what we're listening to find the strength in it too? How it can make us actually better, how we can help other people through that experience. So yeah, this is important stuff. It all starts with mindset, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll just take a moment. So we have Jeremy, Jeff, and Shalia, I see are showing up in the comments. If anybody else is with us live, please feel free to throw a comment in the comment box or drop a question, and we would be happy to answer your questions either live or during the replay.
We're going to have a lot more people watching this on demand, I'm sure. So
I agree.
Hey, everybody on demand.
Yeah, that typically happens. So for 2 weeks afterwards, people will be sharing it and watching it. Yeah. So please feel free to continue to ask your questions and we'll get back to you. So I also understand you founded Empower Youth. So is that a nonprofit that you created?
Actually, when I quit my day job, respectfully, and it was a great day job, but I was sitting up one night. I just saw a commercial for LegalZoom. It was like, get incorporated, and I thought, well, hey, if I'm going to I need to be represented by this company. So that's kind of the funny, real story to it. But at the time, I was only speaking to high school youth and college students. So I started Empower Youth. And if you envision the YOU and youth as you, I thought that was the name for the first company that I started to kind of help hopefully catapult my speaking a little bit, just giving it an entity name. But truly, it was about empowering youth. And it was just a series of leadership workshops at conferences for students and teachers, school assemblies, district meetings, anything that where teachers and or youth would be at, where I could help provide one of my leadership programs to help motivate them. And then little would I find out, or unexpectedly find out a couple of years later, then CEOs were asking me to come speak at their events, and they'd see me speak. And then, most businesses are a referral business, so speaking's no different. So people just start asking me to speak. And so Empower Youth is how I got started, and it's how my speaking got started. But now I speak to pretty much anybody who has an event and maybe a budget. So hey.
Budgets are nice, aren't they? Yes. So I am also a huge proponent of mental health care. And I always advocate, I have a therapist who I love to work with. I don't work with her all the time, but I use her the way that I use any other health provider. And when I need it, I make an appointment and get in there and do the work and get out. And I advocate that to other people. But a lot of people are, they don't talk openly about it. They don't acknowledge the need for mental health support. And what advice would you have for someone who is experiencing an eating disorder or depression and they feel like they should be, or that they can handle it on their own?
There's a lot to unpack in that question. I think it's really important. Again, I don't have the answers, but I have insights. And I think one of the things that people need to realize, or at least think about, is thinking. Meaning, according to the American Psychological Association, 73% of the average person's thoughts on a daily basis are negative. Think about that. I mean, that's 73%. Now, some people might be like, well, that's way too low, but at the end of the day, just because we have a negative thought doesn't mean we're depressed, or just because we're going through some adversity doesn't mean, hey, life's falling apart. But it's like the world is full of adversity, but the world is also full of people overcoming it. And I believe that mindset is a key to our persistence, our just keeping us fueled, finding passion in life. But certainly if somebody is going through some times where, hey, I just want to talk to somebody. I mean, that's what I view counseling as. You're talking to somebody who has professional experience in how to listen. And my wife and I, she probably, if she watches this, she probably will not appreciate me sharing, but I don't mind, because I want people to know she and I attended some counseling earlier this year. We were going through a tough situation, and we kind of weren't communicating about it effectively, and it kind of was just not going away. So I suggested to her, and she agreed, that we should go talk to somebody who can help us better communicate about this. And not that it was an easy fix, but what it did was it helped us better communicate, and we are so much better for it now. So I would encourage anybody to do that, to go to somebody who can provide professional help. But at the same time too, and let me be very clear about this, if you've ever thought about harming yourself or harming others, that is definitely where professional help is needed. And I do believe, if I talked to my best friend, Phil Pope, back when I was 12 about my anorexia and my depression, I wouldn't have thought to even do that. But if I did, Phil couldn't help me like Carol did. The only reason I'm alive today is because of Carol Vanderswag. And I was the first boy that she ever treated.
Wow.
So professional help is the only option for people that truly want to get better, I believe.
Yeah. And I love what you're sharing about just even in a marital relationship, a lot of the habits that we have are techniques that were emulated as we were growing up. So if we didn't see really great communication techniques happening in our home, then we have integrated that, even if we don't want to express it. Sometimes when things are really difficult, that is what we express. So it is worthwhile to learn new techniques. I think it's a fabulous tool to have in your back pocket when you hit a difficult patch, because there are some things that are just really difficult to discuss. I see
Well,
that. God.
And let me just mention this too. We don't talk about counseling. We don't talk, hey, I went to counseling today, or but if people were to go maybe chat with their best 3 to 5 friends, their circle, and ask, hey, do any of you at times, or any of you talk? Because I need to talk to somebody. I feel so confident that they'd be surprised how many of their close friends actually see somebody.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that normalizes it. And that's why we need to talk about it more.
Yeah, I agree. Before my husband and I got married, we went to marriage counseling because we both grew up in very challenging homes. And we were a little worried about getting married, whether it was a good idea. So I felt more comfortable marrying him, knowing that he was open to going to counseling.
Wow.
Then I felt like, well, he'll do whatever is needed, when we hit difficulty.
Right.
And so I see that Jacqueline is here. And so she said, so true. We must move past the stigma attached to getting the care that they need. Yeah, so very true.
Yeah, Jacqueline, you're a rock star. I appreciate you writing that. You too, Jeremy and Jeff and Shayla.
And Shalia,
Anybody
yeah.
else?
Yeah. So besides TEDx Cape May in October, hopefully next year, what else do you have going on for 2022 from a speaking perspective for your business?
Well, right now what's going on is I'm trying to keep my head on straight. A little bit of more transparency for you. Let me brag and show you my two babies and my
Oh,
wife. We've got a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old, and I've heard raising kids prior to having kids. People told me, hey, it's easy, right? Or I thought no. But it definitely amidst the pandemic, it's been even that much more of a challenge. But I've been at home so much more too. So my top priority every single day I wake up is making sure we got the day planned for them and they're good. But as a speaker, I love what I do. It is the hardest work I've ever done, but every time I do it, makes all the work behind the scenes the reason for it. And so that's really my number one objective. I love also helping other people through coaching too, if they want to get into speaking. I love that as well. It makes me a better speaker when I coach people. But real simply, Mary Beth, those are the two things I love to do, and I want to do it as much as I can outside of family time.
Yeah, so hopefully in 2022, we'll see a lot more opening up. I'm starting to get the sense that more events will be happening in person. So fingers crossed that holds true. And so Shalia just commented, the shame that can be very heavy, and having a trusted community to speak about the raw journey is critical. Yeah, excellent point, Shalia.
I like that. Yeah, I can't agree more.
Yeah, so we have a little bit of time left. Are there anything that you wanted to talk about that I didn't ask you about yet?
I really want to give you kudos for this series, Struggle to Strength. I think just by us having this conversation, whoever's watching it, I think, one check at a time, we're kind of doing our part, I think, in a way, or at least doing our best to help people realize that whatever they might have gone through or whatever they are going through can actually be used for good. It can be used to find strength. So if we weren't having this conversation, we wouldn't be nipping at that stigma against it. So I just, if anything, just want to say thank you for inviting me, and let's help people think different about the struggle. It is strength, but we have to have that perception on that to find it.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. I love that point. And I was much like you, like trying to hide the struggles that I grew up with and to not look like where I came from, that kind of thing. And then eventually, over time, I realized that when people would compliment me on a strength that I had, I knew that it came from the struggles that I had
Wow.
experienced. That's why I'm good with emergencies. That's why I'm, so reliable, all that kind of stuff. And then once you start to piece that together, you can figure out that it's something to be proud of, right? If we integrate that and not just get stuck
Yeah.
on the struggle and see how it has manifested in our lives in a positive way.
Yeah. And that's, I think, the challenge. Again, I believe it's a muscle. It has to be exercised in the right way. But there's a quote by Tony Robbins. I remember him saying this many, many years ago. Repetition is the mother of skill. How we get good at anything is by practicing it and applying it. Um, and I'll never forget. I always give if I talk about speaking, I always give a shout out to my first boss. I call him Dice. That was our nickname for him. And during my first year performance review, because presenting was a little bit part of my job, not much, but a little bit. I was doing student workshops. The only thing that he nicked me on and said needs improvement on was my presentation skills.
Ah,
So he didn't mean at the time to kind of challenge me, but I wanted. I don't think I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have had the desire to improve as a speaker if I didn't get that negative feedback. So, and it hurt me. I was like, yeah, of course I knew I wasn't good at speaking, because you know what? I didn't like it. And so if I didn't like it, I probably wasn't going to be that good. I wasn't going to work on it. So, again, another, in a kind of a lighthearted example, struggle to strength. And now I'm a professional speaker. So how about, it's kind of weird.
yeah. And the videos that I watched on your website, you guys, you have to check out Kevin's website. I'll put it in the comments after we're done. But the video clips, it looks like you are having the time of your life when you are on stage, and the audience just seems to be so engaged. You do a wonderful job.
Thank you. Best compliment I ever got was from my brother, who we are both up in Boston. I was presenting at a conference. He was there for work. So it was kind of ironic. We were there at the same time. He came and watched me to do my keynote, and my brother waits in line to chat with me, which I thought was kind of cool. And he looks at me and goes, "I can't believe you get paid for that." Because that just looked fun. And I thought, well, hey, what you just watched me do in 1 hour was actually 5 years of preparation,
Absolutely.
and hours and hours of work into that specific presentation as well. And if you know your audience, you know why you're there and how to help them, then it's all about how you package it, and whether it's virtually or in person or hybrid. Presenting, I think, is extremely challenging. But most people have seen a good speaker at some point, and I think most people have seen a lot of not so good speakers. So they appreciate a good speaker. I'm not saying I'm a good speaker. I just do the best I can.
Well, it looks like you do a great job, and I will see you in person next year. So Shalia has a question. So Kevin, what is your filtering system to process the challenges you endure in reaching your goals, to process them constructively to keep you moving forward?
Wow, I might have to hear that question twice. But I think I got the essence of it. I'm gonna go back to a turning point moment in my life with my counselor when I was a teenager. Carol knew that I played piano, and she knew that I love music. My mom was a very musical family. My dad, not so much. Anyway, Carol asked me in one of my sessions, "Kevin, you're driving home with your mom today. A song comes on the radio that you don't like. What are you going to do?" I remember Carol asking me that question. I was 15 years old, still struggling, right? I mean, for 3 years, I was still struggling, getting better, but still struggling. That was a turning point moment when I realized Carol was asking me, or telling me in a way, by asking the right question, helping me realize that if I didn't like the song on the radio, well, I just changed the station. And what Carol helped me realize was I had that same power inside my head. And not that it just flipped a switch and things got great, But I realized then that I had power, that just because, and catch this is probably the most important thing, at least from what I believe. Just because we have a negative thought doesn't mean we have to agree with it. And
Yeah,
I don't know
excellent.
where, I don't know where negativity, I don't know where negative thoughts come from. We definitely know if it comes from somebody else, yeah, okay. But what about inside of our own head? Where does that even come from? And I think that's where we need to then begin to unpack, kind of the years of maybe things that have been said to us, what we take in, how we perceive it, the stigmas that are probably invisible that we believe in, the myths, the assumptions, all this stuff just kind of becomes junk. And I know, in my presentations, I can't change the world in the short time that I've got, but maybe I can, give people one more thing or one thing to think about. And changing the station usually is what people come up to me afterward, because that's a great question. And that's truly what I apply now. Even this morning when I had some negativity going on, I was like, change the station. I have that power.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if we can take another question, do you have time for one more question, Kevin?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So my sister-in-law is on, Stephanie. So she says, hello, I work in academia and students have been really struggling with their mental health during COVID. And even now that we are back pretty much in person, our introverts are especially struggling. Do you have any thoughts about how to best serve our students during this time?
I can only imagine let me repeat that. Or say it different. I can't imagine what it would be like to be in college right now, let alone in school in general. I've got a niece and nephew who are teenagers, and every time I see them, I ask them how they're doing. They're still, a year ago and up until recently, they were doing virtual. Now they're back in school. They're both introverted. I hope they're not watching this. They're amazing. They're amazing, but they just happen to be a little more introverted. I don't know if I've got the right answer for that, but I do know this. Schools, colleges, universities have so many support services for students. I mean, students have got so much love around them to help them succeed. And there's not a one-size-fits-all answer to that question, respectfully. It's like, why do students drop out? Well, it could be a whole host of reasons. And sometimes they synergize too, like with me, what they did. And it took one person, the dean of students, who wrapped his arms around me. I remember Dean Curran, 1994. I mean, I walked to his office several times to drop out with the form. And he looked at me every time and said, Kevin, come here. Let me talk. Let's talk. And he was like, what's going on? And so I think one of the best things that we can do is, and I think this is a Stephen Covey quote, treat them the same by treating them all differently. Having kids now, I definitely realize what that kind of means, but also with students, I think each one has got, and especially younger kids, they are a mirror of what's going on at home. And so whatever they've got that, they might be dealing with, good and bad, is what they've experienced probably when they woke up that morning or the night before. So I know that there's lots of support. I think trying to connect as best as possible, kind of at their level. I believe we all have something in common. Sometimes we just really need to find it. So those are just some insights. I don't have the answers, but I hope maybe there's something there that you can maybe unpack a little bit more.
Yeah, that's great. And then Jenny has a comment. This is a great topic, and there is shame in so many struggles, especially any kind of addiction. So to open up discussions on these hard topics is a great example to set in all areas of mental wellness. And Jenny is a wellness professional. So yeah, that's definitely her jam for sure. So Kevin, what would be the best way for people to connect with you if they're interested in having you speak at an event, or they just want to get to know you a little bit more?
Well, I'll even give you a little special treat. I always have a free copy of my book, Think Differently to Achieve Success. I'm pointing to it. I think I am. It's a free copy on my website, and you can download a free copy. You can share it. It's unlimited. I love it when parents download it and they say, hey, I actually I paid my kid to read your book. Because I wrote it for a college student in mind, or a youth person in mind. But I talk about, each chapter is a different lesson. And I talk about, like, the Price is Right's one chapter. My turning point with my depression, anorexia is another chapter. I have a whole chapter dedicated to when I was arrested and how I got through that and how that changed me as a person. Accountability. That's something talk about struggle. That was painful for me, but I made a big mistake and I was caught red-handed, literally. And I'm glad I was held accountable. But I would love for people, if they want, just go to my website, kevincsnyder.com. I think you can see it here, maybe not, but it's kevincsnyder.com. Download a free copy of my book if you want. And I've got a blog there as well as information about my programs. So that's just a good way for us to keep in touch.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I will put a link to your website in the comments. And I have a feeling that my nephew may be reading your book sometime soon. That sounds like a great suggestion. I think it has all the elements to entice a young teen. There's prison. There's all kinds of things going on. So
what took me 3 years to write, they could probably read in 3 hours. And I don't I don't mind admitting that. So hey, 3 hours, $50, maybe something might change their life. We'll see.
$50 is a big payoff, but whatever it takes. Well, thank you so much, Kevin, for joining me today. And I think everyone loved hearing your perspectives. Can't wait to see you in person next year. And I'm looking forward to staying in touch.
TEDx Cape May, and Mary Beth, thank you as well. Honored.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.